Hello, today I want to talk about intellect because I read a really interesting article online the other week about how they said people that had similar intellect seem to be in happier relationships. Now, I think that's entirely a bogus conclusion that is drawn from bogus assumptions, and let me tell you why. Number one, how do we define intellect? Now, the way that society normally defines intellect is through aptitude in school, right? So either through something like a standardized test like the SATs. For example, some of the more well-known intellectual societies like Mensa, the Triple Nine Society, one of the key requirements for admission into these societies is you have to have scored at a certain level or beyond on, say, the SATs. Now, that is ludicrous because when I looked at some of these qualifications, I qualify. Like, my SAT scores qualify for, like, the Triple Nine Society and some of these other intellectual societies of so-called geniuses. And that is ludicrous because I know that those standardized test scores have nothing to do with intellect whatsoever. So it may have something to do with your ability to learn very quickly, right? Some people may equate that with intellect, but that's not my definition of intellect. You can be a total genius when it comes to book smarts, but as far as common sense and understanding how the world operates, you could be the exact opposite. You could be a complete moron and an idiot. And I have seen that in the real world, so I don't consider that to be a sign of intellect. And furthermore, when I was in grad school, my first year that I was getting a master in public policy, I decided to add an MBA on. And I studied for my MBA, those GMATs in about 2 weeks. I had a 2-week holiday over the Christmas holidays, and then I had to take the GMATs to gain entrance into business school the following year. Now, in 2 weeks, I was able to score within the 98th percentile, meaning only 2% of the entire country that took the test that year for business school entrance examinations did better than me. So, are you really saying that because I was able to get a score within the 98th percentile after studying for merely 2 weeks, that I was smarter than 98% of the people in the country that took that exam? That is, again, a ludicrous conclusion to draw. And furthermore, as far as what I understand today regarding the paradigms of how things really work in school versus what we're taught in school versus the lies and propaganda and the convergent thinking that the institutional academic system encourages us to dwell just within this really narrow tunnel of vision without having an expansive creative thinking thought process and without having a creative divergent thinking process. I know that is not true because I know at the time, way back when I was scoring so high on these exams that I was basically a complete idiot as far as understanding how the world really worked and operated. So, if I don't understand the truth about these paradigms which the moneyed elite have built and, the illusions and the propaganda that they disseminate through their distribution channels, like the institutional academic system, then how can you be an intellectual? You can't. You cannot be an intellectual. So, what's really funny is when I was growing up in Philadelphia, I knew a kid. I became friends with a kid named Patrick Shute. And when I was talking to him, he knew so much about history. Now, I was just beginning my journey then of destroying the illusions that I had internalized through the institutional academic system and really learning about true American history. And, because all the history we learn about wars, about politics, is all written by the victors. So it's extremely biased, and at times, even their flat-out lies are sold as facts. So once you learn that your scope of history that you're taught in school, no matter where you live, in whatever country, if you're learning about your country's heroics and battle and war, you're not learning the true history. You're learning the history of the victors, that the victors want you to believe, and that, the propaganda that they're selling you. So I was talking to Patrick. I said, because Patrick actually told me he dropped out of school. So I think he dropped out of high school. So it's like, man, like a lot more about the truth than people that graduate from the Ivy League schools. So how is this possible? And he said, well, I just self-educated myself. So he said, I just went to libraries, I bought books, And these are not the textbooks that have been handpicked by the moneyed elite, by the bankers that fund the institutional academic system for you to learn from. These are books that basically gave a much broader horizon or perspective to the knowledge base that we are taught in school. So he actually was able to get a 360-degree picture of the truth rather than just a very linear 180-degree slice of the truth, or not maybe of that 360-degree pie. So we're not even getting half. We're not even getting 180. We're probably getting like a 25% slice of the pie. So he was able to see the whole 360 degrees, whereas I, going through college and even through Ivy League schools, was only getting a 25% slice. So, the interesting thing about intellect is like what we consider, to be the traditional definition of intellect is definitely not intellect. And, one thing that I can say towards intellect is the fact that anyone that has gone through the institutional academic system has been basically herded like sheep into a very linear, narrow way of thinking called convergent thinking. And I discussed this actually in a video I'm going to release next week called The One Essential Personality Trait for Happiness and Success. So I'm going to explain all about this longitudinal study of divergent thinking and what it revealed as people went through the institutional academic system, how they actually were dumbed down by the institutional academic system. So make sure you check out that video. So just again, back to the original point of, do people with similar intellects really have a much better possibility for a happier relationship? I don't believe that to be true at all. I think there's something culturally that people with the same educational pedigree share that actually gives them a commonality, so they have a chance for a longer relationship, whether that is coming from old money, because if you attend Ivy League schools, there's tons of old money in these schools. So again, you already have a commonality trait. Your kind of belief system, what you believe to be true, you're going to grow up your whole life if you only see one side of the story, which is likely if you grew up in a very wealthy family. You're not getting the diversity and exposure to all kinds of thinking from different levels of people with different levels of socioeconomic status, people with different religions than you, different cultures. So in that sense, I think it's just the way your belief systems are set up, that people are mistaking for this commonality intellect when it's basically just the type of background that you share with that person. So people have way too narrow a definition of intellect, and they say, oh, intellect is just your educational pedigree. You know how many times I've heard in my life people say, hey, where'd you go to school? I'll say University of Pennsylvania. They say, oh, you must be really smart then, which is a ridiculous conclusion to draw, because if you define intellect just by educational pedigree, then that is such a narrow definition of intellect. And not only that, some of the most closed-minded people I have ever met in the world have come from Ivy League schools, because they say, oh, I paid $50,000 a year for my education, so what I learned in school must be right. And you don't know what you're talking about, and I know everything because I graduated from an Ivy League school. So I've actually even heard the educational pedigree grant people a sense of false entitlement, a sense of false intellectual superiority. Their argument that they are right is based upon where they went to school. Oh, where did you go to school? I've heard that from people I've been in arguments with, saying, oh, I went to Yale. Where'd you go to school? Thinking like I went to some community college or something like that. And, actually, even if you went to community college, you could be brighter than a lot of people that went to Ivy League schools. But when they hear I went to Ivy League schools, then all of a sudden they have to come up with another argument, because then they can't claim intellectual superiority to me. But that is ludicrous that is people's claim to intellectual superiority, because I have met patently dumb people from Ivy League schools that think they know it all and are arrogant, unyielding, narrow-minded because of their educational pedigree. So it could be actually some of these personality traits like unyielding, like arrogant, that actually make people successful in a relationship because they share similar personality traits, and it has nothing to do with intellect, because they're basing intellect upon educational pedigree. So thanks for watching today. And again, make sure if you want to learn more about how the educational system actually destroys people's creative thought processes and their critical thinking skills, make sure you check out my next video that I'm going to release next Tuesday called The One Essential Personality Trait for Success and Happiness. Thanks for watching. Please comment below. Let me know what you think. Does intellect really contribute to happiness in couples, or is that just a bunch of rubbish like I believe it to be? Okay, take care, and until next time.